A very warm welcome to EdTech Monday, the first regional edition. We're delighted to partner with CNBC Africa to take this conversation across the African continent. Our focus this month is driving tech-enabled education lessons from 2020, and we want to use these lessons really to map the path forward for 2021 and for the future. We have a great panel with us. Let me introduce our panelists. Happy to have with us Lasina Kone, who is Director General of Smart Africa Secretariat. Thank you for joining us. Also with us, very happy to have Albert Nsengiyumva, who is the Executive Secretary of the Association for the Education Development in Africa, ADEA. And we have with us Chief Program Officer at the MasterCard Foundation, Peter Materu. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Very quick one before we jump into the conversation. If you were to summarize education over 2020, what you saw, what your families, we're all in this, we're experiencing, what our communities have experienced, what would the one word be for our schools and educational institutions, for our learners, for our teachers? Albert, let me start with you.
The first word that comes in my mind is really preparedness, crisis, and uncertainty.
Thank you. Let me come to you, Lasina. What's the word, or what are the words you would use to describe education over the past 12 months?
Thank you for having me. I will actually describe it as a crisis and uncertainty.
And we see the commonalities there. Peter, for you?
Yeah, certainly crisis, but also opportunity.
Thank you. And great to start on that note, just focusing us on what we see as the key issues facing us. And to tap into that word opportunity, Peter, that you just shared. Ladies and gentlemen, e-learning in Africa, in collaboration with the EdTech Hub, has been working on a report which they have released, the effect of COVID-19 on education in Africa and its implications for the use of technology. Interesting, 50% of respondents thought that this disruption has presented an opportunity or a significant opportunity to the continent, while recognizing that there are immense challenges. With that, let's jump into schools, closure, opening again, trying to figure it out. Online learning. Let me start, Lasina, with you on this issue. And we've adapted as much as possible, but it remains incredibly difficult. What did we see, and what do we expect moving forward for 2021?
Thank you very much for these questions. We've adapted, but we have not adapted enough that I can see, because our economies in Africa, this crisis showed that not only in Africa in general, there's no resiliency. And we've been advocating for this digital transformation on the continent for a long time, since the creation of the Smart Africa in 2013. And now, the reason why I'm saying this, we have not adapted enough. If you look on the African continent, you look at different economy, different countries who have actually embraced the technology, who are going towards the knowledge-based economy, they suffer less than other countries who did not adopt quickly or adopt enough. So going forward, I completely agree with Peter. It is a crisis, it is an uncertainty, but it is a significant opportunity. Because now we see that a range of our governments in Africa here, they're actually accelerating the digital transformation, particularly school. Just imagine 297 million students today are sitting home without education. And knowing that education is the backbone of any nation. So that's really a crisis. So it's up to us now. I believe that the government have made it very clear, particularly the Smart Africa Board members in our last board meeting in December 7th, that the digital transformations should no longer be a luxury. It is a necessity.
Let me come to you, Albert, on the same issue and what we need to be doing to really shift the needle.
At the moment, countries are grappling with issues of learning loss. fear of examinations in some cases, with schools being banned, reduced number of returning to schools. But on a positive note, some progress has been around preparing schools to receive learners by putting in place structures and mechanisms to meet the health protocols like mask, washing hands, and social distancing. Although this last aspect is proving a real challenge for many governments, going by the learner numbers and fewer classrooms. Some countries have teacher training and support programs, but time will tell whether these have a large impact on quality overall. This is again where I see the importance of adapting and expanding the use of technology. I think this will have a great impact. And indeed, as Peter suggested, yeah, this is a time of opportunities indeed. Moving forward, we should try our best to make sure that we adapt technology as much as possible. Thank you.
Peter, coming to you, one of the things that we do recognize is this is maybe ensuring that we have a huger inequality gap for those who can't access technology, cannot then get education. We're seeing what's happening on the gender front, you know. What then, talk us through the role of the foundation, first of all in responding to COVID, and then on this key issue of education.
Yeah, thank you very much, Julie. First, to say that I fully agree with my colleagues here that it's been a big crisis. We have yet to learn the full effect of this pandemic. And as you said, Julie, those on the margins are the ones that have been affected the most, and they're going also to have the most difficulty getting back. You know very well that the reports that we've seen that girls have been affected more than even boys because of gender-based violence and things like that. So coming back is going to be a challenge. So the foundation, being a foundation that believes strongly that everyone, irrespective of his or her own beginnings, can learn and prosper, has been right and center in responding to this crisis. We put up a program right early on to respond to the crisis. And it was interesting to see that the point that Lassina raised about technology, countries that had been resistant to technology are now jumping, saying this is where the solution is. From radio all the way through to online learning, we got requests from different countries. We saw a great partnership between public and private to try to respond to this crisis. Something that has been a challenge in the education sector is happening. And we saw also, very interestingly, now efforts to think about those who are on the margins, programs that target the excluded, young women, refugees. So for me, there is a positive signal coming out of this, which is changing mindsets in government, in the private sector, and also parents. We are seeing that a lot of appreciation for the role of schools, a lot of appreciation for the role of teachers, something that was taken for granted or sometimes even spoken to negatively. Now people are appreciating the value of schools and the formative role that they play to bring up our children, but also the fact that it is a place, a center, a school is a place where it's safe for our kids. It is a place where kids can get that nurturing that we cannot provide when we are out at work. So a lot of positives coming out, and I think we need to leverage this going forward.
Thank you for that. Yes, we celebrate our teachers. Now more than ever, we know and understand. We walk with you and we appreciate you. Thank you for your service to all the teachers. Moving on to look at adaptation. You know, when learning was disrupted, we did see a lot of adaptation in country. We saw many different stakeholders playing key roles. Would love to tap into your thoughts on that, Lassina. What did you observe? What was exciting for you? And moving forward, what are who are the partners we need at the table, really leaning into contributing purposefully to adaptation?
questions. What during the COVID 9 month when school were closed, we've seen things like we've seen even country falling back to the television for education. If I remember correctly, television was the time of my elder sisters back in the days. I'm talking about 1970s, and for us in the technology ecosystem, to be honest, it's very hurting because today we're with the proliferation of the digital transformations, tools, and so on and so forth. And now that we have a crisis and we're going back to the basic television education, it was really an eye-opener. However, this has led us to questioning on the existing reform and calling for a fast rethink of how not only education, but how quality education could be effectively delivered in an inclusive and equitable manner through technology. So based on these that I mentioned, we have launched Smart Africa here, the development of a blueprint for ICT education and skills development under the leadership of Burkina Faso, who is a member of the Smart Africa. The blueprints highlight the current challenge of ICT education across the different regions of the African continent. It analyzes different best practice across the globe and present some practical approach towards the successful implementation of ICT education and further showcase how we can mainstream ICT in our education system in Africa. The education sector, especially in Africa, need to adapt into a new dynamic environment to keep pace with the competitive world. We need to overcome the traditional system of learning and allow the various impactful way promised by the implementation of technology in education. As such, the whole value chain to give meaningful impact to the education sector through the technology need to be worked on.
Thank you for that. Albert, let me come to you and let's talk about strategy and policy in country, maybe even regional. What are you seeing that's been particularly interesting, exciting? What worked? And how do we ensure that some of these things do translate into future policy? So we are evolving.
The non-formal education subsector continues to be a challenge in most African countries, worsened by the current situation of COVID-19, and especially with the second wave of COVID-19. As a DEA, we conducted a study known as Impact of COVID on Africa's Education in August 2022. So for instance, we found that a lack of consistency in the recording of protection-related risks to learners and evidence of remedial action is limited. Although there is a positive move in using new online and offline learning tools, platforms, and materials, it benefits only a small proportion of the learner population. Therefore, there's going to be a need for financial support to the education sector for managing the disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic that has largely been from the national stimulus and special fund, as well as from external sources, particularly from major international and regional development organizations, such as the World Bank Group, the African Development Bank, the Global Partnership for Education, to name but a few. Now, moving forward, we believe African countries need to put in place a comprehensive and well-resourced Ubuntu or Utu education plan to insulate the sector from disruptions due to the disasters and emergencies. So this plan could include developing a comprehensive remote education policy, instituting strategies to incorporate critical aspects of COVID-19 experience in education management and information system to inform the education sector reform, and leveraging the lessons learned from the successful and failed partnership and collaboration during the COVID-19 crisis to improve future stakeholders' engagement and in times of crisis. Just to make a quick comment on Lassina's point, I think indeed I have never seen, or we have not never seen such a momentum for partnership.
Absolutely.
Because having strategies in place is one thing, but making sure that strategy can be implemented through partnership is so critical. This is where Africa needs more cooperation, more collaboration among the key stakeholders. And here I'm calling the private sector, particularly telecoms. I think they have a very important role to play beyond the business per se. I think they have some level of corporate responsibilities to education as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Momentum for partnership is incredible. And maybe here on EdTech, we could look at possibly having an episode with our telco partners on the continent, people who we need to ask, how can you lean more into education and really help EdTech thrive for all in Africa? Peter, let me come to you now on how EdTech really rose to the challenge at a time when this continent needed it. You know, we did see entrepreneurs, you know, tech specialists, you know, all coming together with teachers, training was happening, tools being created. What did you observe, and what do you see now in terms of the potential moving forward?
As I said earlier, the MasterCard Foundation put in place a program that we call the Recovery and Resilience Program in response to COVID. And that covered responses from emergency all the way to building resilience of communities and institutions to recover from this. And what we saw is that a number of countries where we work and countries where we even are not present at the moment came up and expressing interest to work with us in the area of remote learning, starting from radio, television, all the way to online learning. And just to give you a few examples, in Nigeria, we have a private company, it's called Data Science Nigeria, and another one called Malaysia, which worked with us, we provided some funding for it, to reach 1 million young people, to get them access to education, either online or offline, using different innovations that came up during this period in order to make sure that young people continue to get access to education. In Kenya, we worked with another organization called ENESA to make learning and revision materials available to young people, where they could go ahead and ask a teacher a question and get responses within a short period of time. And this based on feature phones, not smartphones, because you got to work with what you have. And so a number of innovations of this kind came up during this period, and we are really pleased to have been part of this solution. Within the foundation itself, we have a network of partners and our scholars program who have been for years running on the face-to-face approach. And during this time, they came to us and said, can we quickly put in place online learning to enable our students to continue to learn? And we've been supporting that. And we expect that although this is a response to COVID, we see this as an opportunity to really mainstream what Albert referred to as remote learning or virtual learning, because it brings with it other possibilities which have not been there before. The ability of that young woman who is in a rural community who wants to learn but cannot go to a campus in the city to be able to access education. The possibility for the farmer who cannot go to school during the day to be able to learn offline during the off hours after farming. So the possibilities that come with the possibility with technology go well beyond what we see right now as a response to COVID. And we are committed as a foundation to continue to work with countries and other partners, private and public. And our EdTech Center in Kigali was set up primarily for this role. We said, we have a lot of young people out there who are developing solutions that are useful in education, but they are doing this on their own. And then here you have governments saying, we need to do more to reach more young people. So how can one help to broker a relationship between the two. And our EdTech Center in Kigali is intended to do exactly that, bring together education entrepreneurs and governments, policymakers, and other operators in education in countries to see how we can leverage these innovations in technology to advance education.
Thank you so much for that, Peter, and a very big thank you to all the partners that we work with on this incredible work. I come to you now to take a look, Lassina, at the fact that it's a challenge, but it's also a very exciting time. And I'm sure for Smart Africa, looking at just how to ensure there's access, that we are able to get connectivity across the continent. Tell me about this journey for you as an organization.
All what we've been said is true. For the COVID, in fact, we took a structured approach, a very holistic approach. We have actually outlined 4 digital infrastructure projects that cut across broadband affordability, intra-Africa connectivity, and also working together with the ITU, who is a co-chair of Smart Africa, and UNICEF to drive what we call the GIGA project. The GIGA project is the huge project to connect all the schools actually being driven by the UNICEF and ITU. And we are a big advocate of a GIGA project in Africa, which is mapping the school in every country and connecting them. It has already started, the mapping has already started. So that will ensure the use of the technology to empower children attending school around the world. As part of the ongoing digital transformation initiative as well, Smart Africa kickstarted in 2015, 5 years ago, the Smart Africa Scholarship Fund, aiming at providing a scholarship to the most promising student at selected centers of excellence. We have here Carnegie Mellon University, we have ESMT in Senegal, we have in different parts of Africa. We also launched a Smart Africa Digital Academy, in short, we call it SADA, as the driving vehicle for implementing Smart Africa capacity building and skills development activity across the digital skills spectrum. SADA is a dynamic Pan-African learning ecosystem in which African citizens of all age and social classes can acquire or improve their digital skills, acquire qualifications, meet the emerging talent needs of employers, industries, or be self-sufficient. SADA started this implementation through the policymaker to empower them to adopt agile policy, of course, which is very important, and regulation for successful digital transformation. So far through SADA, we have trained more than 300 decision makers from 21 African countries during the year of 2020 alone. Because changing, when we say shifting the paradigm, it starts with the decision makers first. So from 21 countries, we've actually managed to train about more than 300 of them. They're trained on continually evolving topics such as digital identity for underserved people, artificial intelligence, the innovative regulatory environment, which we call sandboxing environment, data protection and privacy, internet affordability, and more. We've actually gone so far because when you talk about digital transformation, of course, the infrastructure is part of it. What have we done for infrastructure? We are launching something we call internet affordability. What does that actually mean? Connectivity within Africa is the big challenge. However, the capacity around the continent of Africa, the submarine cable capacity is not even utilized at more than 10%. So what do we do to launch, to interconnect African country, at least to his neighbor? So we are negotiating right now with the supplier, something we call bulk purchase power. What does that actually mean? Countries of Smart Africa members come together, aggregate all the demand for a long-term RIU, 10, 15, 20 years. It's the study that we conducted last year. It proved that we can bring a cost saving to the landlocked country by 100% of what they're paying today, and reduce the cost of it by 50% for countries facing the sea. So these are some of the things that with some of the initiatives we launched recently, and we're working hard for it as a response for COVID.
Very, very exciting. We'll be watching the journey. We're with you on this journey. Albert, let me come now to, let's be pragmatic a little bit. We're excited. We see the challenge. We're going to rise to it. But we have to face the fact that there's a lot on the ground that still needs to be addressed. So there are challenges faced, for instance, by edtech entrepreneurs. How do we help them in this environment to grow and to thrive, to expand? We so need them to build capacity. What can we do to walk the journey with edtech entrepreneurs?
I think we have a number of examples of the technology-driven or the business technology-driven by young people. I'm sure Athena have a good example of these young people that are coming with innovations, all kinds of innovation in technology, being in fintech, in edtech, and others. So I think there's a coalition that need to happen from organizations such as Smart Africa Secretariat, educational stakeholders, private sector, and the international organization to see how we can actually accompany this young generation of people who come up with new ideas to actually address the use of technology to transform our economies. I think this is clear. And I really have hope based on what I'm seeing. I've been looking at some of the competitions going on. I can tell you, I'm proud to see countries like Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast. You have this tremendous community of youth that are coming up with innovative solutions. So our role as leaders is to make sure that we give them access, we facilitate them to get access to financial resources so that they can at least have a minimum startup capital and they can even compete globally. I'm really hopeful that in another few years, we will see changes happening in this continent so that we can change for being consumers to being producers of technologies innovations. So I think that's really the next step that we need together, working together on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So important. We are actually in the final moments, final few minutes of the show. I must take a few questions that have come in. And this one is asked by Jennifer Otieno, EdTech East Africa. She sent a question asking, how can we encourage collaboration between private edtech companies and public institutions? What can we reasonably expect to see in terms of investments in edtech, and particularly from the public sector? So I think it's a great question. We've got people doing great things in edtech. We've got governments, trying their best to address a new world, right? To meet the needs of a new world, and somebody needs to help just bring these two together. Who would like to kick us off with thoughts on this? Thank you. Please go ahead.
We need to focus on the young people. And as you know, the MasterCard Foundation strategy is all about young people, creating opportunities for young people. But we also realize that to get this right, it's not only about funding activities of young people, it's also about being around the table, engaging with the policymakers and other actors, parents, communities, the non-governmental sector, private sector, because it takes everyone to really make such a big shift as we're thinking about here. So we have shifted our model to be present in the countries, to be present in the dialogue, and to be present in the life of the young people, the life of the leaders in that country, the life of the private sector, and be part of the team that is working together to bring about this shift. We also need to go below the politics, and it's important to work with the actors themselves, the teachers, the leaders in education below the political leadership, because we know very well that transitions happen, and we need to have a cadre of convinced leaders who are going to drive this going forward. So we through our country offices and our regional offices, we are working with the leadership in countries to see that this shift of mindset also happens in the leadership, while we empower the young people to bring out their creativity and come up with innovative ideas that will shift the paradigm. Now, the third dimension of it, which I would like to suggest here, is that those of us who are working on this challenge in Africa, Smart Africa, ADARE, and others who are working in this space, I think we need to find a way to work together more collaboratively so that 1 + 1 + 1 is greater than 3.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much for that. Incredibly powerful. Albert, your thoughts?
As we talk about youth empowerment, we still have a mismatch between education training and the labor markets, because the labor market changed so quickly compared to education. And this is really something that we need to focus on as government, as partners as well. We just concluded a research as part of our partnership with MasterCard, looking at the status of technical vocational skill development in light of digitalization or the fourth industrial revolutions. And the study tells a lot. It shows clearly that unless we rethink the way we teach, what we teach, to make sure that we align with the labor market needs, our young people will not be able to cope with the new changes that are happening due to digitalization. So we are calling governments, as colleagues, friends here have already said, I think we are calling government to partner. We're now busy, countries are busy establishing this single market. But for the single market to have a meaningful realization, there's a need to harmonize our policy and strategies around the issue of skills development, particularly aligning with digitalization. As a day, we were planning to have a high-level policy dialogue on this, probably around May, and I'm happy that I announced this. I'm sure Lasina will be in touch with you and other partners. We are calling government to see how we can collaborate on rethinking technical vocational skill development for the future of work and lifelong learning, in light again with digitalization. And this is going to be very important, because unless we fix education and training to make sure that young people are equipped with not only the technical know-how, but the new entrepreneurship behavior, I think we will have really still a mismatch for years to come. And we'd like to make sure our young people actually benefit from all these efforts that are being made by organizations like Smart Africa, by MasterCard foundations. For them to benefit from this, they need to be equipped with the required skills to be able to cope with the demand in the labor market. So this is so much important to me, and we definitely need to work together to address this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. To my final question, and it links with a question that was sent in by Claire Mongo of M. Shule, and she had asked, as we imagine a world in which all teachers, parents, and learners have access to education technology, what would have been done by funders, governments, and private sector to make this possible? So in essence, she's saying, what role are we must all play a role in this. So really looking at the way forward, let me start with you, Peter, on this. We last year, as the MasterCard Foundation, launched the Secondary Education in Africa report, a lot of learning about about education on the continent, things shifting and transforming now. When you look at what we knew then, what we've learned over 2020 and the way forward, what's your key recommendation for the future?
Yeah, so thank you, Judy. We did this study last year, the secondary education and the future of work. And one of the key findings at that time was that we need a lot more teachers to shift the needle. And then COVID came, and the future of learning itself became a question mark. So the teacher of the future, who is the teacher of the future? What is the school of the future? Because although we are seeing this as something that happened because of COVID, in fact, the future is going to change permanently because of the opportunity that this pandemic has brought around. So focusing on the teacher, first of all, is important. Building the teacher of the future, a teacher of the future who is comfortable working in the technology environment, a teacher of the future who is a co-creator of knowledge with the students, not the holder of the truth. So major shifts in teacher training are absolutely necessary. I think it was Lasina and Albert who referred to also on the need for us to change not only the curricula, but also the way learning and teaching and learning is done. The pedagogical approach to learning needs to change. And that is about the teacher, but it's also about the learner. It's also about parents, changing mindsets of parents to understand that learning of the future is not rote learning as it has been in the past, but rather everyone is a co-creator of knowledge in this future. And that would also mean upskilling the teacher. We have a lot of teachers in the system right now who are important, have been doing very useful work. And how can we have these teachers be part of this future that we're building together? And so the Mastercard Foundation is working to put in place major programs that will help to start on this journey, but we cannot do it alone. We have to work with others. We're working with ADEA, as Albert said. We're working with ministries of education in different countries, and we will continue to work also with the private sector and through our EdTech Center to bring in innovations from education technology innovators to contribute to this transformation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Peter. Who is the teacher of the future? What is the school of the future? And how do we create a system that enables us to ensure that millions and millions of young people are able to find a dignified opportunity for work and livelihood on this continent? Lassina, let me come to you. Your key recommendation.
Key recommendation really to address, some pillars of the Smart Africa Digital Academy implementation include program for digital inclusion, which is a skills marketplace for professional and talent bridge for companies, which we deliver, which we believe are the key ways of not only bridging education with technology, but also ensuring job opportunity for youth Africa. Albert, we talked about the inadequacy of what being taught and what's in the market. To address really the long-term impact of this COVID and beyond the COVID in education, it requires a very strong collaboration and cooperations with all the relevant stakeholders, MasterCard, ADEA. We really look at the Smart Africa, we look forward to build these strong foundations and collaborate with all the stakeholders to advance the digital transformation in education. And we are very open to already start, concrete actions with ADEA and the MasterCard in the light of in the context of our continent, in the light of all this COVID-19, to move forward with an agreement between us, how we can actually explore this synergy between our initiative and our effort for the benefit of our continent.
Thank you so much for that, Lassina. I'm sure, just a reminder, it is the MasterCard Foundation, but I'm sure MasterCard themselves, as well as an institution, corporate, should be playing a role as well in this absolutely important. Albert, you have the final word, sir.
And I'm happy to have the final because they have really said everything. So mine is really to reiterate again what I have said. I think what is coming out of this session, number one, it is clear that none of us can actually succeed without working with the other. I think that's the point that is coming out of this discussion. So partnership is so important. From our respective organization, bringing governments on board to raise ownership at the country level. I think this is a very important point. No matter how much we can get infrastructure, no matter how much we can raise the importance of technology-led economy and education, unless countries take lead and own whatever we're doing, there's not much we're going to achieve. So I think that's really the number one that I think it's important. Number two, we need to go back into education. I'm happy that you mentioned about the MasterCard secondary education in Africa, where we were really very much involved in. And happy again that Peter focused on really the need for a teacher. The technology will not really remove teachers. Teacher will always be needed. The thing is, how do we change and transform these teaching professions to make them more productive by using technology? I think that's really the point that I'm getting out of this. And of course, what is a school today in the technology world? The school is everywhere. I remember in the past, people were looking at schools as infrastructure. With technology, you can learn from wherever you are. This is what we are talking about. I think it's so important that the lifelong learning become part of our life. And lastly, whatever change that we are doing, whatever investment going, can only be seen once our economies become competitive globally. That's what we are talking about. Let's make sure that we equip our young people to become competitive at a global level. Africa is still lagging behind. Our effort is to make sure that we are seen and visible globally. This is what I wanted to share as a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, Peter, please.
Julie, just two very quick points. One is about the need to focus more on girls' education going forward, whether it is technology or beyond, because we know that we are lagging in that space, particularly at the secondary level and beyond. And to think carefully as we do all this, how can we be inclusive of girls to achieve that 50-50 parity? Within the foundation, that's a key element of the MasterCard Foundation strategy. We're saying everything, especially women, because we know we need to rebalance the playing field. That's one. The second one is the role of the private sector. Education has been seen more as a public good, yes, but I think with technology, there is a big role that private sector can play. I'm pleased to see that during COVID, some telcos have zero set their platforms for young people to learn. How can we make this bigger? And maybe even go beyond zero setting, think about access to devices. Because if we are going to get this right, we've got to also make sure that everyone, including the poorest, can have access to devices that can enable them to learn. And what kind of innovative schemes we can put in place with the private sector to make this happen. And I'll be happy to follow up on this with the Lassina and other colleagues who have this mandate to see how we can work together to make that happen.
Thank you very much for that. The gender question and the issue of supporting the girl child in so many communities. It's a complex problem, as Peter has said, as you've said, Peter. It's not just, access to technology, far wider, and the MasterCard Foundation is committed to being on that journey. And also, of course, access to the gadgets, the tools that people will need to ensure that we don't create greater gaps within society, but we are able to bring the most marginalized into learning using technology and on platforms. So thank you very, very much for the conversation. Gentlemen, it's been a great conversation. I'm just going to tease that we are back with you next month. And it will be on the 8th of March, which you may know is International Women's Day. And so our edition on 8th of March is really going to be focused on the theme for International Women's Day, which is women in leadership achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. We'll have a great panel. And so, Peter, you've almost just previewed what we're going to be discussing in the next month. Thank you so, so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.